We're back with a
Yes, indeed.
special episode for Black History Month 2022. And we are back because of you, our listeners and viewers, who have been writing us and asking us on social media, when are you coming back?
And we're back, and we thank you here. A tsunami of thanks. But before we begin, we must give a shout out to the creative genius that make all revved up. A shout out to Cavante Smalls and to Kyla Wright.
And before we talk about how to and how not to celebrate Black History Month, let us also add a tsunami of thanks to our listeners and viewers. Thank you for listening to us on the various podcast apps and for watching the actual live recording of the podcast on our YouTube channel. We are grateful for your support, your encouragement, your feedback, your reviews, and your comments. Thank you so much for sharing the podcast with others. Now, Irene, let's roll it.
Let's hit it.
With hundreds of parents flooding an auditorium to accuse the school system of teaching their kids that racism in America is structural and systemic, something the school board denies is part of the curriculum. Things got so heated that the board members eventually walked out, leaving the police to deal with the unruly crowd. 2 people left in handcuffs.
This is an unlawful arrest. I have a First Amendment right.
Irene, folks are losing their composure and perhaps their minds when it comes to teaching Black history in schools. The clip you just heard was a June 2021 Reuters story on a school board meeting in Loudoun County, Virginia. Parents were up in arms because they believe the school district is teaching that racism is structural and systemic. Irene, what have we here?
Well, let me say this. I give the school an A+ because they are correct. And the parents certainly show you how not to celebrate Black History Month. You know, the very interesting thing about this, and I need to say this is not just the province of the South, because we have numerous examples of Southern school boards, banning Black History Month. But we also had a recent incident, Emmett, and I'm sure you read about it, or at least seen it in the news, about this Massachusetts preschool who had to close down the preschool because the activity for Black History Month was blackface. Okay, and then there was another, and the interesting thing about this is up here, up south, but in a progressive enclave called Newton, Massachusetts, which is just right outside of Boston. So again, it's very, very interesting that, when we talk about Black History Month, people lose their righteous minds, even some with ill intent and some with good intent. So, I mean, what do we do here other than persevere and really show that that Black history is very much American history? But listen, let's talk about what really caused this shift here. It's very, very interesting when I'm going to go so far back as Baby Bush, who had this issue with, quote, identity politics. And I'm going to go even further back when we argued for African American studies as a legitimate subject matter. But moving fast forward, what really caused the earth shake, let's give it to her. I love her to death, and she couldn't get tenure from her alma mater at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, supposedly a progressive area, Nicole Hannah-Jones. Because you see, we're told, that 1620, the Pilgrims came and landed on Plymouth Rock, or as Malcolm say, Plymouth Rock has landed on us. But she shifted the entire paradigm and also the school curriculum, saying that, truth be told, it happened on 1619. This called the White Lion, where they describe some 20-odd Negroes, were on board here. That is a systemic change that's going to take a good while for people to swallow.
Well, you have laid it out. You've given us our history lesson, and I've always said that you are absolutely brilliant. And I think you're being a little too brilliant and a little too logical here, because I think that the real issue is that the demographers and the sociologists years ago said by the year, and I'm not even going to put the year in there because we real close,
Mm-hmm.
by a certain year, the
Mm-hmm.
United States of America would turn into a majority minority.
Go
Now, I
ahead.
don't like those pejorative terms of majority and minority because we always know that as kids we're taught that the majority rules. And the lie of white supremacist ideology has tricked everyone to believing that white people are the majority. White people
That's
have
right.
never been the majority, not around the globe, and literally not in the United States, which is why there's been a disenfranchisement of black and brown bodies, people of
Systematically.
color.
Right.
So when if you take all those folks who are in prison and put them
Oh my
back in the
God.
population and give them voting rights, then you'd have the scales
Yeah.
tipped. But
Yeah.
because of the date, there's a huge anxiety amongst white people who are wondering about this central question. If we did this to them
Well,
when we
well,
were the
right.
majority, quote unquote majority,
Right.
and in power, what in the world are they going to do
Gonna
to
do
us
us.
when
Right.
they
But
become the majority?
you're so right. When we talk about, and I remember this back in the 70s when they said the browning of America, and a lot of us kind of chuckled, like, yeah, 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 because we've been given disinformation. But the interesting thing about it is that this is what we have to realize, that while the United States in particular becomes, more brown, that we had to understand that the shift of power wouldn't be like, okay, you're a majority now, we're just going to give up power. But I think that what we're seeing here, and in a very, very classic way, we knew long before we hit February 1st of 2020 that come Black History Month, it was going to be, some kind of explosion, no pun intended. And what I mean is our HBCUs have been threatened with bombs.
Yes.
And, that's our academic jewel. That
Yes.
is where not only do our vice president come from, and we all know that MLK comes out of Morehouse, but more of us come out of those places, like more of us come out of the Black Protestant church than we come out of any place. And it has molded us and it continues to mold us. And when you look at someone like Kende, Ibrahim Kende, HBCU, I mean, when you look at some of the honest shakers and movers, Thurgood Marshall, again, the shakers and movers of society, they come out of these places here. But we knew coming, rolling in for February 1st, we have seen these kind of arguments constant about conflating Black history with critical race theory. So, and the interesting thing about it is one has nothing to do with the other, but it doesn't matter because any conversation about race highlights the white fragility that white people experience whenever we have to say we need to take down this Robert E. Lee statue.
Mm-hmm.
We might need to just push the beginning of America just 1 year back and to 1619. And oh my God, what 1 year back does an entire sea change that they're just not ready for.
See, I'm again. You are too brilliant for this conversation because I'm gonna go to this central point, and you raise this point. How in the hell, and I mean that, in the Hebrew is Sheol, but how in the hell can we celebrate Black History Month and there are bomb threats at all of the over 100 HBCUs
HBCU.
in this nation?
That's right.
Like, how does that equate?
That's right. Well, the motto for HBCUs across the board, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. But I want to say here, a Black mind is a dangerous mind. And they know that. And they know that. So, I mean, the whole idea that they would even hit these HBCUs remind me, look, where do we congregate? Where is that intellectual genius being nurtured? It's either the Black church, come on,
Mm-hmm.
or it is these Black institutions here, meaning these meaning our HBCUs here. I think the thing that gets me here, I tell you, if you tell the whole truth, you have a better history of American history. So I sat in class, and you have too, and I've heard numerous people, we've heard it on the radio. I don't want my white child to be subjected to the toxicity of telling the truth about America's beginning. And so
Mm-hmm.
I say to them this here, because they said they don't want their child to be uncomfortable. And I can't tell you, Emma, the numerous times I've been the only Black child, and you probably have too, in a
Mm-hmm.
classroom. Okay, and they teaching Black history, and they're just perpetuating disinformation. But this is the thing that I say, that if you don't want any harm, come to your white child, then tell the whole truth. Tell about the white allies that helped us. Tell us about the Native Americans that helped us. Tell us about, the Japanese and the Chinese who couldn't come here but were part of that March on Washington.
Yeah.
So my point is that it wouldn't be so bad if you told the whole truth, to see that the truth is most people of color and white allies, were fighting against this small, very loud group of bigots.
See, there you go. One more time, Irene. You're making too much logic. You're
Okay.
making too much logic.
Okay,
My thing
well-
is this: if you concerned about the feelings of the white children, why ain't you concerned about my children?
Okay.
Like, how do my children feel
That's
when
right.
they don't
That's
see
right.
themselves represented in history in their own country? When they
Mm-hmm.
don't see themselves represented in the brilliance of the creativity of this nation? When they
Right.
don't see their culture represented in a way that is affirming, valued, right?
And
What about
respected,
my children?
absolutely.
If we're gonna take it down to the children level, I hear your grievance about your children and how they may feel. How about how my children actually
Really
feel?
feel. That's right. Well, you know what they're going to do now? We no longer, that white people no longer use billy clubs to beat us. They'll have a bill passed. They pass bills to ban, critical theory, black history curriculum. So the next bill coming down the pike, watch my word, and I think I'm a soothsayer on this one. We're just going to ban February. We're going to take February out of the calendar. Okay, we're going to go from January to March. Okay, so all of you people, that include Abraham Lincoln and Douglas and Frederick Douglass, who are being honored in February. This is why Carter Woodson gave us this month, not to shortchange us 2 or 3 days, but gave it in honor of the folks, these two particular people born in February. We're just going to go from January, and a bill will be passed, and we'll just go to March. Well, it'll be an 11-month year as opposed to a 12-month.
Hey, Irene, I bet you that bill will be passed before the Voting Rights Act and before the
Okay.
John Lewis
The-
bill.
And the
I mean,
George Floyd,
and
that's
George
right.
Floyd. I think you may be onto something. Matter of fact, I need to take a break so that we can just think. I need to think about this. I need to let what you just said marinate on my mind for a second. This is the All Revved Up podcast. We'll be right back.
The Second Amendment was created to protect against tyranny. But during White History Month, you would learn the truth that the right to bear arms was added to the Constitution so white men could keep their slaves in check. That is a true fact. See how much we're learning?
This is the All Revved Up podcast. We are back. You just heard the Amber Ruffin show. Amber Ruffin talking about why we need a White History Month. This clip was from February 5th, 2021. Irene, do you believe that we need a White History Month?
It's been nothing but white history. We're trying to correct the historical record here. This is what we're trying to do. But you know what? The video made me think about this here. In many ways, we celebrate blackness, but not the history of blackness. So how we celebrate blackness is we celebrate it in certain sort of relegated spots. We see it in sports. We'll see it in entertainment. But when we have black intellectuals, we don't hear their voices. I think Ibram Kendi is very unusual because he has this book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. To be quite honest, Anna Nicole Smith is unusual because she has this 1619 project, and it was so damning about how we all have been misinformed about American history that you just couldn't ignore it. You just really couldn't ignore it. But I need to say this. Lerone Bennett, I remember this as a 10-year-old, wrote this book before the Mayflower, and he talked about that boat called the White Line coming, but coming to these shores in Jamestown, Virginia. But Emmett, the thing that I want to talk about is how presently we celebrate it, and it kind of also becomes problematic. So one is that I see sort of like the corporatization and commodification of Black History Month. We see a kind of hypervisibility, a lot of symbolism, still no substance here. I mean, I'll give you an example. So I'm thinking about, throwing away all my Apple products because this month they came out with a Black History Month theme Apple Watch. Can you believe this? Can you believe this? And the thing that bothers me about it is that first of all, the visibility, the hyper visibility on PBS, on ABC, all the major networks here, it sort of indicate that black people have really achieved. It remind me when Obama was president, the post racial era, and they were saying, well, we don't need to have Black History Month. And Mitch McConnell said, oh, yeah, we really don't, because not only did we give you affirmative action, we gave you the Civil Rights Bill and the Voting Right Bill and Obama. So those sort of things really, really kind of just get to my craw. It's like we got to take much better control ourselves as black people, like the way we take control of Juneteenth, our holidays, the way we take control of Kwanzaa, because as long as it's filtered through mainstream society and these major networks, it capitalizes on sports, entertainment, and black suffering. That's all it does.
You got a lot on your mind. I mean, you wrote that out. I was just inspired by Amber Ruffin because she says that even in a way of telling American history as white history, we still don't do it right. We still
Yeah.
don't tell the reality of why white supremacist ideologies have taken over the narrative and become the macro, as it were. And so she's saying if we actually told it right, then we would see the issues and the concerns and the systemic and the structural notions of not only racism and prejudice but lies. And so
Right.
here's the thing, Irene. I don't want another chicken dinner, watermelon dessert. Um, right? I mean that's isn't that the imagery of I've been teaching for a long time, as have you, on college campuses, and it is the thing that every Black History Month, the Black Student Union or the Black Student, whatever that organization is, always uses that moment to advocate for a black meal in the
Uh-huh.
cafeteria, which shows that the cafeteria don't care about black people anyway. If you got
Well,
to advocate for a, what we used to get on Friday nights at some spots, and on first Sundays at some spots, right? If you got to advocate for a fried chicken dinner with a watermelon dessert at your institution, they don't care about you.
no, they don't. But you know what, though? See, now I'm not. Listen, let me just tell you now. At every chance I get, I eat fried chicken. As a matter of fact, I think that black people should get a discount on fried chicken. Okay, and I wanted to wait a minute. And I also want to say this. And I'm saying this very critically. Kentucky Fried Chicken, that Colonel Sanders, he appropriated that menu,
Yeah, he
that
stole that.
recipe from a black person and put his white face on it. But let me just say this: it's okay to serve those dishes, but to give the history of our resistance, of why we have taken the scraps that were thrown to us, the animal scraps that were thrown to us, like chitlins, like pig intestines, and making it chitlins, like oxtails. Come on now, how we took those foods that were nobody wanted and made it a delicacy today that we have restaurants. So I'm okay with the fried chicken, but don't give it to me and you're not going to give the history behind it. The same thing. So this is the stuff. The same thing. I don't need to learn about what 12 years a slave in a movie theater. I need to learn about it and the nuances about it in a classroom. And I don't need to learn about the Detroit riots that we went to see, Emmett, okay, in a movie theater, because it becomes trauma porn as opposed to an important kind of academic curriculum to look at why these kind of incidents happens and continues to happen. So the venue in which black people are funneled is the theater, entertainment, and sports. So how do you take black lives seriously? That's the stuff that bothers me. But what is happening with someone like Kendi and Hannah Nicole Smith is that black people, unlike back in the day, are writing our history.
Well, black people have always been writing our history. I mean, Carter G. Woodson wrote, the miseducation of the Negro, and Lauryn Hill sang about it. I mean, so we've been doing this for a long time. So I really don't understand why there is this new, kind of hysterical notion around it. other than the fact that there's a new phrase that's bubbling around called CRT, which has absolutely nothing to do, right? So you can't blame the preschool in Newton who did blackface. You can't say that they're
Ooh,
trying to teach those preschoolers CRT. That was
right?
absolutely ludicrous. It was disrespectful. It was disingenuous, and it was a horrible stunt, trick, or whatever it was. Right. So
Right.
there's a conflation of these terminologies that gets these folks over in Loudoun County, Virginia, all riled up as if the school board is actually teaching that racism is structural and systemic. You
Yeah.
better believe
Yeah.
racism is structural and systemic, which is why we're still talking about it in
Got it.
2022.
Yeah, but Emmett, though, I think now some of them, some folks don't really know the difference. But the propaganda that has come out from the conservative right has really allowed for a lot of folks to, even with good intentions, not understand the difference between Black history as well as critical race theory. But and the thing about it is that it's big money. Like business execs and wealthy Republican donors have given enormous amount of money to have this drive against critical race theory as well as the 1619 project here. So one of the things I just think that we have to do and we continue to do, just like we have made, Carter Woodson made it 1 week for us to commemorate and celebrate Black history, and now it's a month. I just think we need to do it 24/7 now. We got to make it 24/7, not just wait for February. Or if we or do this, take February out of the calendar, all right, and let's just celebrate it for 11 months.
And so I agree with you. The thing that I'll add to that is this: we don't need no one's permission to do that. We don't need no one's validation to do that. We don't need a federal bill to do that. We don't need a state, amendment to do that. We don't need a city legislation to pass any kind of, whatever. We can just do that on our own. And if folks can't get with that, then they can line up in Loudoun County, Virginia, and get escorted out of the school board meeting with handcuffs. I mean,
Yeah,
let
yeah,
that be.
yeah,
Like, I don't
yeah.
think we need to pay attention to the obstacles. I don't think we need to pay attention to the negative energy. I think we need to live our lives out loud and with great pride and be
Yeah.
exactly who we are.
And no, have been who we have been all our
That's it.
lives here. I want to share this quote by Carter Woodson. He said that if a race has no history, if it has no worthwhile tradition, it becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated. But you know what they say? But we will always rise. We refuse to go down like that.
Not only will we rise, as Big Sister Maya Angelou said, but we will overcome. And so
Yeah.
today, as our benediction, we want to share with you this musical performance that my son and I did last year. We debuted it as a special episode for the All Revved Up podcast, and the response was so beautiful and so endearing and so touching that we wanted to bring it back to you again for Black History Month 2022. This is We Shall Overcome.